The pentagram is a symbol that has its earliest appearance was 3000 BC in Mesopotamia. So I'd say it's quite an ancient symbol, but it holds a lot of very significant symbolism. So today I just want to discuss all the different symbolism and all the different representations surrounding the pentagram. So let's get straight into it. Now, to begin this video, I just want to clear a couple things up. I got into a discussion recently on Instagram regarding the pentagram. There seemed to be a lot of confusion about what the pentagram actually is. So let me just demonstrate. This is a pentagram. This is also a pentagram. This is a pentacle. This is also a pentacle. So it doesn't matter if it's upright or reversed. If it's got 5 points, it's a pentagram. But if it's 5 points, a five-pointed star with a circle around it, then it's a pentacle. Simple. And this, by the way, is a hexagram, otherwise known as a Star of David, which is not a pentagram. So. Alright, now I've got that cleared up, let's carry on. So as mentioned, the pentagram dates back to, well, its earliest appearance being 3000 BC in Mesopotamia, but the pentagram was also found on cave walls in the Italian Alps, and also in the or diverse locations in the southern Alps. And those date back to between 6000 and 800 BC. But apart from the actual pentagram, there's also, from a runic symbol point of view, there's also the lined star wheel, and I'll show you an image of it over here. So these were more in line with the Ogham script. If you're familiar with the Ogham script, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you're not, Ogham. Go and have a look at it on the internet, just Google it quick. So the Ogham script, sort of similar to runes, but more in the Anglo-Saxon realm of things. So it was used as a language, and also the Ogham staves used for divination, for magic, spell work, etc., etc. Now, this five-pointed star with the staves on it was called a wurda or verda, and this is a Proto-Germanic word which literally means word. However, in the Old Norse language, it translates to orth, which means reed. And reed, if you are familiar with the Wiccan reed, a reed is a set of instructions, but it's more of a recommendation on how to live your life. So it's not set in gold, it's not absolute law, but it is because of its naming. It's considered the word. Now, you may be familiar with the childhood story Jack and the Beanstalk. And the pentagram does appear in Jack and the Beanstalk. So in Jack and the Beanstalk, in the original version, remember when the old man sells the beans to Jack, he says to him, "How many beans make 5?" And Jack replies, 2 in each hand and 1 in each mouth. Now, obviously, as I say, this is in the original version, so if you want to actually have a look at this, then try and get hold of the original version. You can find it online. And what this alludes to, when he says 2 in each hand, it's actually, as I say, what this actually alludes to is 1 bean in each hand and 1 bean on each foot, and then 1 in the mouth. And now the 1 in the mouth was considered a a cure, more of a prevention of evil spirits entering the body, because in those times they believed that evil spirits entered the body through the mouth. So you put a bean in your mouth, and this would prevent evil spirit from entering your body. But it also, if you stand up and you extend your arms out, then you've got one bean in each hand, one bean on each foot, and one bean in the mouth. So it actually forms the pentagram, 5-pointed, or 5 points. Now, there's a lot more to this riddle than just that, but I'm only discussing the pentagram here, so I'm just going to leave that as it is. And if you want to go discover more, then just throw yourself into the riddle and see what you come up with. Now, the Greeks used the pentagram extensively, and it was often found on in its inverted form on coins. And in the Greek format, in its inverted form, it was a representation of the goddess Hugieia. And the goddess Hugieia was the goddess of health and healing. So the Pythagoreans placed Greek letters on the 5 points of the pentagram, and I'll show it here so you can see what I'm talking about. So in the bottom, where we would normally associate spirit with where the point is iota, and then epsilon going round the pentagram. We've got upsilon, and then epsilon iota, that's a combination letter, and then gamma, and then alpha. Now, to form the name Hugieia, you start at epsilon. Oh, sorry, I keep saying epsilon, I don't know why. You start at upsilon, and then you draw across to gamma, and then down to iota, up to the epsilon iota combination, and then down to alpha and back to epsilon. So you form U, G, I, E, I, and then A. That's Hugieia. It makes up the name Hugieia. Okay, now please bear with me because my Greek isn't very good. But if we start at upsilon, this is the letter U in English, in modern English. And this refers to the word udor, which actually means water. So we have the element of water in upsilon. Then we go across to gamma, and this is the capitalization. If you take the capitalization of the letter gamma, then it actually forms the name Gaia, which means earth. And then we go to iota, and iota is an I, which is for the word idea, which literally means idea, or the divine thing, and this obviously then refers to spirit. Then we move to the epsilon iota combination, and you can actually form this. If you combine the letters, you can actually it resembles the letter theta. And epsilon iota combination, I found the word hail. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but this means heat. But if you take the letter theta, you can actually find it in the word thermos, which means, well, also means heat, and this obviously then refers to fire. Then we go down to air. And this is A, and it's in the letter air, spelled A-E-R, but obviously that then means the air. So you have the 5 elements within the pentagram as it's suggested in the Greek form, forming the name Hugieia. Then we can look at the pentagram from the perspective of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Now, I'm not going to say Kabbalistic, because this is not Kabbalistic at all. It's not, although Hebrew is found, the Hebrew letters are found in the on the points. It's definitely not Kabbalistic, and it's definitely not Hebrew based. because in this representation we actually find the Jesus, the Christ, or Yeshua, the Christ child. So it's definitely don't associate with being Hebraic or Kabbalistic. It's purely Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. So I'm going to show the pentagram here with the Hebrew letters. So with this we start with the ineffable name of God, with the letters Yod, He, Vav, He. He, the last He final. And this, as I mentioned in previous videos, is usually pronounced Ia or E, but in this case we're just going to use the letters. So this is the Tetragrammaton, and often referred to as Yahweh or Jehovah, Yehovah, and it forms once you put the fifth letter in, which is Shin, then it goes from being the Tetragrammaton to being the Pentagrammaton, and the Shin in the whole formation stands for the sun, as in the sun, S-O-N, not the sun as in the celestial body. And then we have Yod He Shin Vav He, which is the word Yeshua, and that is the Christ child. So then we formed the Pentagrammaton. And in this formation, if we start with Yod, this is the father position, and it's fire. And then we move to, we don't move from point to point in this situation. We move from a point following the line. So if you start at Yod, which would be down in this corner here, you don't move to Shin, you move around as a circle. So you start at Yod, and then you go to He, which is the mother position, and that's water. Then to Shin at the top, which is the top point, and that's the child position, which is spirit. And then to Vav, which is the sun, S-O-N, which is the air position. And then the He final down in this corner, which is the daughter, and that's earth. Now, if we can even associate the pentagram with Christianity, and this gets a bit controversial sometimes because a lot of people nowadays associate the pentagram with being evil, and therefore it can't be a Christian symbol. You know, I'm speaking of Christians themselves, who consider the pentagram to be evil. It's not a representation of evil either way, whether it's upright or inverted. It's not evil. It's just how you view spirit. If you view spirit moving into the heavens, or you view spirit moving into the earth, and the one would be esoteric, the other one would be exoteric. So it's not evil at all. It's not a representation of anything evil. But it is found in Christianity. It's actually found in a lot of the old churches, in their window, in their stained glass windows, etc. Sorry, need more coffee. Having one of those mornings, still giving up smoking, and been craving like crazy the past couple of days. I thought after day 3 it would be easy, but no, no, it's not. So where was I now? Oh yes, Christianity and the pentagram. So as I say, before the cross actually became the official symbol of Christianity, it was actually the pentagram. And it stands for a few things, but if you're familiar with an Arthurian text called Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, you'll find that the pentagram appears on Sir Gawain's shield. But the 5 points of the pentagram actually represents various things. So it's the 5 senses. It can be the 5 fingers. But in more a Christian perspective, it's the 5 wounds of Christ. And then also the 5 joys that Mary had of Jesus. So that's the Annunciation, the Nativity, the Resurrection, the Ascension, and the Assumption. And then in the case of Sir Gawain, it's the 5 virtues of knighthood. These are the 5 virtues that Sir Gawain hoped to actually embody, and that was being noble, or having noble generosity, fellowship, purity, courtesy, and compassion. Now, you're probably also familiar with the Vitruvian Man, which is Michelangelo's. I think it was Michelangelo da Vinci. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Certainly can't remember. But anyway, the Vitruvian Man, where you have the circle and the man standing in a pentagram formation, but there's also a bit of an overlap with the arms down, the feet together. But there is a drawing of the Universal Man from 1556 by Valeriano Bolzani, and it's called the Hieroglyphica. And this is actually a representation of Christ as the Universal Man. And in the drawing, you see the pentagram. So he's standing with feet apart, arms down to the sides, just out slightly. I'm not sure if you can see it on the video. And then there's a drawing of the pentagram from his solar plexus down to his right foot, up to left hand, cross to right hand, down to left foot, and back up to solar plexus. So there's a drawing of a pentagram over his body. So there's that association with Christ being the Universal Man with the pentagram over the top. And I mean, if we come back to the Christian symbol of the cross, it's not ultimately a Christian symbol. They did extend one of the arms, but if you look at the equal armed cross, then it's been used for a long time, mostly as a symbol of protection. It's used to cross between the worlds. If you put a circle around it, then it actually represents the 4 elements. So the equal arm cross itself is quite an old symbol, way before the crucifix of Christ. But as I say, in Christianity, one of the arms was lengthened to represent the crucifix itself. So I mean, as far as the equal arm cross goes, I don't think anybody can put a trademark on it, obviously. But also the pentagram. I mean, the pentagram's an ancient symbol, sort of used right back to drawing on cave walls. So can't really. If anybody says that the pentagram's a modern symbol and it's used for evil, and they need to actually check up on the history. And there's a lot of symbols like this. I mean, I mentioned it in the Star Ruby discussion with the swastika. The swastika was originally the sun wheel or the philthot, and it was just taken by someone and just reversed and made into a different symbol. It's the same thing with the inverted pentagram. Somebody just took it, inverted it, and made it represent something different. Whereas if you go back to the Greek, as I've mentioned before, they inverted the pentagram, and it meant it represented the goddess of healing. So to actually turn it and say that it's just purely satanic is ridiculous. It has come to represent the satanic symbol, but I mean, in that case, it represents Baphomet, or the goat god. Simply the 5 points being the horns, the ears, and the chin. But I mean, the representation goes a lot further than that. As I say, it can be right-hand path versus left-hand path, esoteric versus exoteric. Just depends how you're actually working your magic, whether you are externalizing your magic and petitioning gods and goddesses to bring in their energy to help you with your magic, or whether you're relying on yourself and building yourself up and improving yourself and making yourself God, your own God. And when it comes to this this representation of upright inverted, whether you're moving spirit into the heavens or moving spirit into the flesh. I mean, a lot of people think that pursuing the flesh over spirit is sinister, it goes against the act of trying to reach or attain enlightenment and things like this. But if you want to take the whole process, you don't just go from point zero to enlightenment. You've got to go through a whole process, and that process usually, unless it's like some completely and utterly rare case, you first need to go within, and going within, you go to the dark places. It's into the inner world and discovering self. So you're moving into the flesh, and you bring in spirit within instead of without. And as you move within, as I say, you go into the dark places and you discover, if you want to go into Arthurian legends, you discover the Graal, or the Grail, the Holy Grail. And that becomes the light within the darkness. And once you've found the Graal, so once we have the Graal, then that is the union of the lower and the higher self. And then you can marry the son and the daughter, and you get the completion of the child that is born, and you then reach attainment, enlightenment, and knowledge and conversation with the Holy Guardian Angel, etc., etc., etc. So then you move upwards. So you do need to move in before you move out, or you need to move down before you move up. So you do need that symbolism. You do need the one and then the other. And you probably find, if you go into Wicca, and I'm not talking the modern Wiccanesque type practice, I'm talking about initiatory Wicca, then you'll find that the pentagram represents certain things within the different grades, and you do have the inverted pentagram within one of the particular grades, and that has its own rotation. But it's very much a similar thing, where you are moving inward, and then you move up, outward, and finding the light, and then in the darkness, and then bringing that and attaining enlightenment. So as I say, there's a whole process that happens, but if you don't go through the whole process, then you're either just imagining things, or you're skipping and not actually getting to the point where you should be properly. And it's also about balance, equilibrium. If you're just using, it's a balance between the left and the right. If you've got a whole body, and you've got a left side and a right side. If you completely ignore one of the sides, you're going to become imbalanced. If you chop your left arm off because you only want your right arm to work, then you become imbalanced. You've got to find the balance between the two. So, and find that equilibrium within. And going back to the inverted pentagram with the Baphomet, people see the inverted pentagram with the image of the goat head in it, and just immediately associate it with being satanic. But the Baphomet was worshipped by the Knights Templar, and they were a rather avid Catholic group. The Knights Templar worshipped Baphomet as Christ. So, and the Baphomet, the image of Baphomet sitting with, sitting on the rock with feet crossed, arms like this, with the horns and the wings and the flame between the horns. That was actually originally created by Eliphas Levi, and Eliphas Levi was originally a monk, or Catholic priest, or in training. So the Baphomet's not purely satanic. It's got some roots in Christianity as well. Again, that could get a bit controversial, and people are going to go, "Oh, it's not Christian." There's a lot of things that you can find within Christianity that Christians would have a really hard time with. I mean, even if you, just to divert it, if you associate, if you're familiar with gematria and associating the Hebrew letters with particular numbers, and then finding the similarities between words because they have the equal number, and then if we look at the Hebrew words serpent and Messiah, they actually equal the same number. So you can associate Messiah as being the serpent, and in a mythological sense it makes perfect sense, because in the story of Adam and Eve, the serpent brought knowledge to man, and the Messiah is the one that brings knowledge to man. So the Messiah, in association, could be or is considered the child of the serpent. But that's controversial, and I'll probably get slammed for it. But anyway, that's the way it is. If you want to look at everything from a broad, proper perspective, then you have to open yourself up to these things. Yeah, so going back to Eliphas Levi, I'm not sure if you pronounce it Levi or Levi. I always think of Levi jeans when I'm saying Levi, so I usually say Levi. So in 1835, his actual name was Alphonse Louis Constant. That's his real name. He was born in Paris in 1810. He was the son of a poor shoemaker. He entered the priesthood at the age of 15, and he started a 10-year seminary education. But being the person he was, he started to develop some unorthodox ideas. In 1835, he was ordained as a deacon, but he didn't like the idea of becoming celibate. And that was one of the conditions to become a priest. So he abandoned the whole thing. But he obviously continued to follow religion, and the Catholic Church had a hold on him, so he continued in fashion. So anyway, so he created the image of Baphomet, and it's quite an interesting image because you have the horns and you have the flame between the horns, which is representation of the light bringer, actually, of Lucifer. So it's bringing lighting the path before you, and that the flame represents the knowledge and lighting the way. So it is bringing knowledge to man, to the practitioner. I say man, I mean mankind. I'm not being gender specific here. And then you have in the image itself, the Baphomet does have breasts, female breasts. And also the phallus, but it's not. I mean, the image itself isn't the actual penis. It's actually more. It's the serpent, the caduceus. That's the name. So it's actually representative of the caduceus, which became the symbol of medicine. But it is a representation of the phallus, and therefore you have the masculine and the feminine within the same body. Then you have the wings, so it's representing all the animals as well, the goat head, the goat feet, the wings. There's also reptilian symbolism in it, so it's a representation of all the animals. You have the white crescent moon, the black crescent moon, so there's a balance between yin and yang. There's a whole load of representation that goes into the image of the Baphomet. So definitely worth having a look at. Yeah, and then we did mention in the beginning also the difference between the pentagram and the pentacle. Now the pentacle is the pentagram with a circle around it. And this is often used, you can actually inscribe it in like a wooden a circle of wood or wax or clay or something, and you can use this to consecrate things. And the reason for that is that it's the 5 symbols, so you're including spirit. So it's not the, if you take the circle and you do the equal arm cross, that's the 4 elements. If you take the circle and you do the pentagram, then that's the 5 elements within the circle. The circle itself represents the cosmos. So what you're doing is you're pulling the elements into the cosmos or into a specific space. If you don't put the circle, then the points can radiate out. But what you're doing is, it's just a representation. What you're doing is you're putting the points within the circle. So instead of the energy radiating out, it gets contained within the circle, and therefore you can consecrate objects, tools, amulets, whatever you're consecrating. So that's what the pentacle is mostly used for anyway. So I mean, there's a lot of representation in the pentagram, and there's a lot that you can discover yourself. These are just some of the basics that I like to talk about. But I mean, you can go into the golden ratio and things like that. There's a lot that can be found. The pentagram's found on flags, on logos, you name it. It's everywhere. And as I say, there's a lot of association with it, historic association, not just modern association. It's come to mean things that aren't entirely true if you consider the ancient representation of the pentagram. Like most symbols, they get distorted and twisted and become something different. Have a look for yourself. It's not just a symbol that you use here and there and for whatever purpose. It's got a long history and a very interesting history. So do some study into it. I definitely encourage you to do that. And that's it for this video. If you like this video, just hit the thumbs up. Share, subscribe. If you haven't subscribed already, just hit the little notification bell. This, by the way, if you're watching this for the first time, if you just come here to this video, there's a whole series I'm doing called, it's the Magickal Foundations. You can find it in my playlist. So I'm going through 2 of the books that I wrote years ago, and just pulling out valuable information, valuable bits to actually give you a proper foundation in magic. Because a lot of the stuff I talk about on this channel is about manifesting, but not your usual kind of manifestation techniques, more involved in the magical things. And if you don't have a proper foundation in magic, then a lot of that's going to be useless. So that's why I decided to do this Magickal Foundations playlist or series. So definitely subscribe if you're interested in this, and hit the notification bell and have a look at the playlist. It will appear at the end of this video. And that's it for now. Thanks, until next time. Cheers.